The Ben Coley Podcast. Hi, how you doing? You're listening to, what's it now, episode 12 of the Ben Coley Podcast, where I talk to you about some of my favourite music at the moment, really. Some of my favourite unsigned artists. That's my main focus, I suppose. It's my commentary on the latest music news as well, even though, again, this week there's not much in the way of music news because, well, everything's cancelled because coronavirus. But anyway, I'll also talk about my favourite song of the week and my favourite album of the week. I'll touch on that briefly. So it's essentially just a snapshot of the past week or so in music. And if you're like me and you love all sorts of genres, then maybe consider this a really good opportunity to just touch base with different sounds and maybe pick up on a few artists that you haven't listened to before. So it's a quick pit stop, I'd say. That's how I like to describe it, for you to get some new tunes under your belt. A little bit before I start, if you've got any suggestions or questions for any future episodes, please hit me up on my socials. So that's _Ben Coley on Insta. At bencoley97 is my Twitter handle. And there's also an email as well, the bencoleypodcast@gmail.com. Copyright is all sorted, so no qualms on that front. All of the unsigned artists have been contacted. They've been informed that their song will be played on my podcast. They've given me full permission for that, and they're not signed to any labels. And even if they are, I make sure that I get full permission from the labels. So that's all sweet as a nut. And as well, if you want to, or hopefully, if you want to find some of these artists that you're going to be hearing from, all the links are in the description box. Also, please like, download, subscribe, leave a review as well. That would really mean a lot. Okay, so first artist this week, in terms of unsigned artists, is a pop artist born in Germany. She's called Harina. I think she's ace. She's got this really vibrant, standout image as well. That's particularly probably the main thing I like about her, because it's kind of what drew me in, and that's how I stumbled across her. I was going through Facebook. That's kind of my starting point for finding new bands. I don't know why Facebook. It's kind of a dated thing now, Facebook. You'd think there'd be other places I'd kind of find artists in the first place, but I stumbled across her on Facebook of all places, and straight away she had this kind of professional, edgy, sharp, bold image about her, and I thought, she could be really good. So I went and listened to some of her tracks, and surprisingly, she's released very few tunes, but the one that I have listened to, I absolutely loved. She's just got so much attitude in her songs, and they're great pop hooks, which is essentially what you want if you're trying to find a new pop artist. So she was born in Germany, but she left her dentistry studies in 2006 to basically pursue her music career in London, and then in doing that she got picked up by Polydor Records in Germany, so quite a big label, and she released her first official single called Insecurities. She released that at the start of this year, January time, and if this track is a sign of things to come, I'm super excited. I'm super excited. So I'm going to let her tell you about this track first, but I love the idea behind this track that she's about to explain. The idea of someone sticking by your side and kind of loving you for all your flaws, loving you unconditionally.
Hey Ben, thank you for having me in my song. This is my song Insecurities, and it's about someone who overlooks all of your insecurities and all the things that you hate about yourself. I think we all have had this moment where we're like, oh my god, how can this person put up with all of my bullshit and see all the bad sides of me and still love me and still be there for me. And this is kind of like a thank you to these people, because I feel like sometimes it's hard for us to, tell them in person how important they are for us. And I just wanted to, write them a little something, because I feel like they deserve it. We all need that kind of emotional lifesaver sometimes to, just not judge us, but give us hope and encourage us, and just be there for us.
At night, I might get low and cry. You come
So that was the first verse you just heard. Sounds so good! It's kind of a smooth vocal delivery, which is why I really like it. Kind of vocally, maybe slightly similar to Mabel, kind of this neutral sounding voice, but just really well delivered. But then she's got attitude. There's loads of attitude just laden in there. So it reminded me of Miley Cyrus, actually. And the track kind of starts with these distant, echoing synths with this kind of chiming melody going on. But then straight away, the melody that Harina's got is just infectious. I love the simple and striking beat as well. And also, one thing that I picked up on, and I don't know why, I'm such a little nerd for things like this, but it was the hi-hat. It was really cutting and really sharp. It comes in halfway through the verse. You might want to scroll back and just have a listen. It sounds really satisfying. It builds it up really nicely for the chorus. Here's the bridge that leads into the chorus. And in terms of Harina's vocal register, it's probably the highest she goes in the whole song, which normally, I don't know, you may not expect that. Normally you think, okay, the chorus has to be where you belt out the highest notes, but it's actually the bridge. But I think it kind of creates this beautiful suspense just before the chorus hits. And you're about to hear the chorus and it's so memorable.
Nobody's there and I'm nervous. You remind me that I'm worth it. I gotta know why your love is so kind. You got my back when I'm in need, overlooking my insecurity. You gotta know I'm crazy at times, but you can see there's way more to me than all of my insecurities. Makeup, I need to cover up what I think's not enough. But you say I'm wrong, yeah, you say I worry way too much. Worry what they think of me, yeah. Worry what I'm gonna be. Worry if I ever see what you see of me, 'cause you believe in when
Here's the middle 8 section that I'm going to play for you now as well. It does a lot for me. So it's got these thick vocal harmonies, these beautiful vocal arrangements, and they're just outlining the main chords that you've already heard throughout the song so far. And then all you hear, the only other thing going on, is just these backing vocals. Again, you've already heard these backing vocals, but it's just reminding you of the chorus. So that hook is just getting stuck in your head every single time throughout the whole song, even when the chorus isn't actually being played, but it just keeps you interested. I just love how the middle 8 is basically a vocal arrangement and it just sounds incredible.
insecurities. My insecurities. My insecurities. I gotta know why your love is so kind. You got my back when I'm in need, overlooking my insecurity. You gotta know I'm crazy at times, but you can see there's way more to me than all of my insecurities.
Isn't she good? I really like what she's doing. I love her energy, and you can tell she's got a lot of creative passion. She's working with some amazing producers, and that's been poured into this. But overall, none of that matters really, the production or who she's working with, if the song isn't any good. At the core of it, you've got to have a well-written song. And I think Harina's songwriting's great, at least if that one track's anything to go by. I'd love to hear some more of her stuff, so go and check out a link in the description. You'll be able to download that song. The second artist I've got is a guy called Jordan Hunt, and this is stunning. I love all the music that I pick, obviously. I wouldn't be talking about it if I didn't, but every now and then there's the odd track that just resonates with me in a different way. And I'm not going to go as far as saying, oh, this is my favourite track, or that song over there is my favourite track, but there's certain songs that really stick with me for whatever reason. So if I'm looking back at artists that I've already spoken about, there was an R&B neo-soul artist that I covered called Emily Lita. She had a track called Plus One, and that really stuck with me. And then there was also a band called The Night House. Again, they had a track that really stuck with me. And this is one of those tracks. And I think it's because Jordan Hunt is a classically trained musician, which to some people necessarily wouldn't mean much, but he's approaching his songwriting from perhaps a different angle. He's approaching it from a very methodical, well thought out, theoretical stance, as opposed to perhaps a feeling. And you can really hear that in what he's doing. So he's a multi-instrumentalist, he's a composer, and he's a vocalist. And he was classically trained at the Royal Northern College of Music, which is important because, again, he brings all of this into his studio work. And what you're about to hear is a track called The Sea. And it's one of those tracks that you can actually imagine, you can see it very vividly in your head. It's music that consumes you completely whilst you listen to it, and that's what I'm liking about it. It's also interesting to know that he's been working on this tune since 2011.
Hi Ben, how are you? I'm Jordan Hunt and this is my song The Sea. It was a long time in coming together. I started life back in 2011 as a classical piano instrumental for a project with a director and photographer friend of mine called Bertil Nielsen. That particular project didn't come to fruition, so I took the bare bones and developed it whilst I was on a residency with the Theo Adams Company at the Watermill Centre in New York, which is Robert Wilson's amazing artist residency space, where we were developing a live show. And I discovered its potential as the accompaniment for a song, and that was back in 2012. And at that point, I think I've only ever sung like one song in public. Around the same time, my aunt Agnes passed away. She was an amazing character, and she was like the matriarch of my extended family. So it was also like my first adult experience of loss. And as I was processing that loss, I was trying to fit some lyrics to this strange meandering melody that has very little rhythmic definition. And I had very little experience of writing a pop song, so to speak. So not knowing any better, I used my classical training and just split it into 2 long verses. But being very deeply contrary on a cognitive level, I tried to balance the dark with the light. So I was writing about my presence at her funeral, but also preceding that with a verse about her presence at my birth. I'm really proud of the lyrics. I hadn't written many lyrics before, and my earlier attempts were absolutely terrible, just so overtly emotional, which weirdly doesn't work for the listeners. It's almost too much, so I set myself some limitations to try and find my own language. It was recorded in bits here and there with my friends in Principle 6, which is the namesake label that it's released on, and we recorded at a friend's house in Aldeburgh in Suffolk. That was 2013 I think, and I actually released a version of it in 2014 as a video-only exclusive supported by my friend Alistair Mackey at Another Man magazine, and it was on YouTube for years after that. I kind of forgot it was there, and only recently someone commented on the video asking me when it'd be available for streaming, and I realised I'd let that slip through the net. So I had the stems remixed late last year by this amazing guy who I found online, Ashley Krajewski, and finally released it this year, around the anniversary of my aunt's passing, 8 years later. It's kind of like my little 5-minute symphony. It had such a protracted creation, but I love how rich and formative its history is, for me anyway. Hope you enjoy it.
The sea, it broke their feet, they flew announcing life a home to all whom shelter sought.
And I think maybe the impression that you've got so far, and certainly for me, is that he thinks about every single aspect of the song, right down to even the smallest kind of details and nuances. So the track opens up with this kind of bleak, searching piano that draws you in. And again, you know, the track's called The Sea, and I'm getting this imagery of this kind of lost and lonesome individual just trekking along this barren coastline whilst the sea's lapping up against him or something. That's what I get in my head. And Jordan, in his own words, summed up his melody perfectly. It's kind of a strange and meandering melody. And that's true. The melody doesn't necessarily sit comfortable with you, but it's strange enough to entice you. You don't turn off from it straight away. You're not like, oh, what's this? What's this bloke doing? It's enough to entice you in. I love the way that the piano outlines his vocal melody as well. It kind of adds to this feeling of kind of just this bleak isolation. And there's so much heartache and fragility in his voice, which translates so well. He sounds like he's in so much pain when he's singing this song. But here's where the song starts to open up a little bit more. So the piano gets a little bit more involved. The vocals become increasingly dark and brooding, and there's this subtle percussion that's added in that I love. Also, I think the main thing that I'm loving is the addition of the violin.
Swam the beach run dry, awaiting tears I could not cry. He held her hand until the end, threw earth upon the earth to send her soul into the sky. I watched a statue, shoulder on which to cry. Those tears I could not find, lost out at sea, the crowd I could not
at the end, isn't it? It sounds so good. And when you hit this beautiful climax, the song then kind of, you know, so it soars up and then it just kind of drops back to where it was before. It kind of redresses the imbalance. It doesn't just go from a standing start to all out to nothing. It kind of goes back to this gentle, calm, serene sort of atmosphere. And that's what I really like about it. Again, you've just been through this emotional journey with Jordan, and he's kind of guiding you through, and then this sense of calm at the end just kind of completes the song really nicely. And maybe I'm thinking about that too much, I don't know, but to me that was just the perfect way of ending this song. Jordan Hunt. I mean, what can I say, man? Remember that name. He's ace, isn't he? So thank you so much for that song, Jordan. It's only been 9 years in the making, but 9 years well spent as far as I see it. Okay, final unsigned artist that I'm going to feature today is a great indie rock band from Coventry called Candid. I think that's a great name for a band. So I used to be in a band myself, and we started off with a pretty awful band name. We were called Maxed Out. And it is an awful name the more I think about it. And we kind of hit this dead end one day, and we were like, do you know what? Let's just kind of revamp things a little bit. Let's get a new band name, new image, all of that. And we were thinking about band names for ages. We were doing things like putting names into a random name generator. We were just picking out random words from books and being like, oh, I wonder if this is going to work. And it's so difficult to actually stumble across a decent band name, I think. But Candid's great. Starting just there, Candid's a great name. So you got Rob Latimer, Dan Latimer, Sam Baines and Ben Williams. And they've had 3 hometown sellout shows, essentially, in Coventry. And they've supported people like Scout for Girls and Hoosiers as well. So, I mean, they're already getting themselves really good support slots. And I'm going to just get straight into this song. So here's their track called Concrete Jungle that came out last year. So right at the start, you got these driving chords that sound like Catfish and the Bottlemen, I think. It kind of opens up, which I really like. But then straight away, it slips into this really neat little groove. And the groove is so infectious. The whole band are just behind it. It's tight. It's punchy. The drums tie it together so nicely. I'm not sure who's the drummer. I don't know if it's Rob, Dan, Sam or Ben. But whoever it is just tight as anything. And the drum sounds great as well. I love the drum sound they've got going on. And it's just this little groovy, I hate the word groovy, it's this cool riff that's just kind of woven so nicely into it, which sounds great. And the vocalist is probably the standout for me above all. I think all the band members are pulling together really nicely, but the vocalist has just got such like a commanding voice that just captures your attention right away. And I'm loving the Arctic Monkeys sounding falsetto that you hear in the background vocals. So here's the chorus, we're going to crack on, and the drums open up a little bit more. You've got this constant washing of the cymbals, and there's this little intricate melodic lead part that if you listen closely now you'll hear that sits back quite a bit in the mix. It's not super loud, so you'll have to listen out for it, but it adds a lot to it. And the middle 8 of the song is kind of this drop down section, and it's just this constant building on the snare, on the drums, and it's this reverberated, like washed out guitar chords, and you'll hear the main hook of the verse again. So it's actually the last phrase, if you will, of the verse, and it's repeated, but I can't seem to quit. And I love that, because what I think the band could have easily done is just kind of repeated a few of the chorus hooks and then gone back into the final chorus, which I think would have been maybe a little bit predictable, in my opinion. But the fact that they've chucked in a hook from the verse just kind of wraps it all up nicely. Just, yeah, I love that. It's just little things like that I really like. And also I love the subtle feedback that you hear as well. So see what you think. It's a track that it's just got so much confidence, I think, from like a young band. Again, as well, I'm going to chat about their image. I mentioned Harina's image, and that I like that. And I just think image is just so important. And I know that sounds like a bit of a knobhead thing to say, like, oh yeah, image is everything. It's not, you know, it's not everything. It's not the be all and end all. But I just think if you've got a band that have got a great image, or if you've got a solo artist that's got a great image, it just, you take them so much more seriously, and you're more likely to click on the song because there's so much unsigned music out there. And they've got this great kind of black and white, almost Strokes-esque image about them that I love. So they're just a band that are writing great songs. They got soaring choruses, sharp writing, and overall it's just a sick sound. Got a lot of time for it. So fair play, Candid. And again, you can go and check out their music. It's all in the description. Normally I chat about music news, but we're in isolation still, and there's just nothing going on. It's so bleak out there. There's no music news. Like, normally I've got so much stuff to talk about, like, oh my god, so-and-so's done this, so-and-so's done that, so-and-so have announced a tour. Everything's cancelled. Everything. I suppose a few little things I've picked up on though is, it was called See Johnny Marr that was doing a little kind of tutorial of a famous Smith song called The Headmaster Ritual, that he was teaching to fans in the home studio. I love that, and I'd love to see some more artists doing that. Maybe some are, maybe I haven't picked up on it, but I just thought that was quite a cool little thing, just Johnny Marr casually teaching you one of the Smiths, you know, most iconic riffs, which I thought was pretty cool. Also, I'm loving Biffy Clyro have been putting up, or Simon Neil from Biffy Clyro has been putting up live acoustic sessions. I think he's doing them live every Friday, actually, just taking fan requests and performing them. And I love that because he's throwing in some old B-sides and some proper deep cut Biffy tunes that only real sort of like avid Biffy followers would like. And I think it's just such a nice little thing that he's doing. And he always looks the part, Simon Neil, as well. He's always dressed up, just looking suave. So my song of the week is from Charlie XCX. She's impressing me so much. I'm loving just everything she's doing, really. So her last studio album she released was called Charlie, and it's probably one of my favourite pop songs of 2019, actually, because it was just so forward-thinking as an album. If you're not already familiar with Charlie XCX, go and listen to that album, because it's pop music that is just so different from so many other female solo artists. Not just female solo artists, so many other pop artists that you're hearing, because it's this great songwriting, but it's got this really futuristic production to it that's so complicated, but it's kind of put across in this really simple way that I'm loving. So her latest single's called Forever, and I don't know if that's to tease another album or not, or I don't know if it's just like a one-off sort of throwaway single that she's just putting out. But it's kind of a continuation of the bubblegum, pop, futuristic, inventive production that she brought to the fore on her last album. But again, it's just amazing songwriting. The chorus is amazing. It's just got this beautiful melody from Charlie that just keeps whirling round and round and over this constant cycling chord progression underneath. But in terms of the music, you've got these thick, beautiful synths that are embellished with these kind of mechanical sounding splashes in the background. You'll hear so many just random noises come in, but it doesn't take away from anything somehow. It just adds to it all, which I love. And I think if you're a fan of what Charli XCX is doing currently, at least on her last album, then you're going to love this song. So it's called Forever. And my album of the week is probably one of my favourite albums of the year so far. Genuinely. I could go on about it, but I don't want to ramble on about it. I just want you to go and listen to it for yourself. But it's The Strokes, The New Abnormal. So I think it's been, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been 7 years since their last album, Come Down Machine. They released an EP actually, I think maybe 2-3 years ago, but in terms of a solid body of work, it hasn't been done in a while. And they are back on such good form, such good form. But what I love about this album is kind of more regressive. It's less is more, I think. There's not these kind of all-out rock songs. There's a couple here and there, but they're just really kind of taking the liberty in just writing beautiful songs. And a lot of them are quite chilled out, but I'm loving that side to them, actually. And I think the sort of form they're on at the minute, this album, The New Abnormal, kind of sits among probably some of the best albums in their discography, I'd say. It's definitely up there with Is This It and Room on Fire as well. So The New Abnormal has been produced by the Billy Goat, the man himself, Rick Rubin, in his Shangri-La studio. So I think any band looking at making a comeback, getting Rick Rubin under their wing as a producer, they're going for gold, really, aren't they? And obviously it's amazingly well produced. There's a few interesting production elements in there. There's a couple of tracks that are mixed in quite a different way that I perhaps wasn't expecting, but it just sounds great and it sounds refreshing for the band. And in some ways, the Strokes have made steps forward in their sounds, but like I said, they're kind of opting for this less is more attitude. Songs like At the Door is completely stripped back to the point that it almost sounds like they recorded a rock song with synths in and piano, and then they thought, actually, it's probably better if we just scrap the guitars altogether and just crack on with the synths. Also, the adults are talking, it's a bit more stripped back. But you've got the usual strokeisms in there, so these intricate and interwoven guitar parts, these playful lead parts, and then just Julian's awesome voice. It's so difficult to describe his voice, this croon, I'd almost say, and he's got really unconventional melodies. All of his melodies are just so out of the ordinary, but they work so well with what they're doing. But some of my favourite tracks are definitely At the Door. I think that's one of the best Stroke songs they've ever released. Also Eternal Summer, that's just 6 minutes of this song that literally does sound like a blissed out summer tune that you'd stick on at a barbecue or something, with this really high falsetto from Julian. And then also probably my personal favourite off the album, track number 2, Selfless, which is just beautiful. I love the Kings of Leon-esque guitar part. It's awesome. But I just think The New Abnormal is a great album, to be honest. And I think it's an album that it's not just going to get the nod of approval from die-hard Strokes fans who have always loved the Strokes. It's also a really good entry point, I think, for people that have just got into the band, or it's a really good entry point if you're trying to get into the Strokes. I'd say it's a great kind of, as well as, I think it's a great album to perhaps go into and work backwards, maybe. It's just a really, really strong album that I think kind of shows off the Strokes in all their glory and kind of just shows how much they've matured as well. So yeah, this is episode 12, and I'm loving doing these podcasts. And I know that obviously times are tricky at the moment, but I mean, if you're listening to me at the minute, then that just means so much. I really appreciate it. And the main thing is, as long as you found 1 or 2 new unsigned artists that you're into, then that's the main thing. But go and check out some of the music I've been talking about. All of the links are down in the description, and I will catch you next time for episode 13.
The Ben Coley Podcast.